All right, Adrian, why don't we go ahead and get started? All right, community members, thank you for joining us today. We're going to start off today with a 10-minute video, which will hopefully provide some information around our system and why we're looking to propose the fees we are. And then after that video, we'll certainly have some time for Q&A with the community. We will also go over some questions that we've already been receiving, some frequent questions. So we'll provide answers to those as part of the presentation here before we get to the live Q&A.
The City of Davis Stormwater Fee Initiative. First of all, what is stormwater? Stormwater is water from precipitation that flows across the ground and pavement when it rains. An important system of drainage inlets, underground pipes, pump stations, and channels convey that stormwater out of the city and into surrounding wetlands and waterways. There are 130 miles of pipes, 19 pump stations, and over 4,000 underground structures that make up the city's stormwater system. This infrastructure is critical to ensure that Davis does not flood when we get a lot of rain. Flooding is caused when leaves and other debris clog the storm drains and pipes, or when water collects in low-lying areas of the city. City crews also clean out stations like this one before every rain event to help prevent flooding. A well-maintained stormwater system effectively moves water from roads and neighborhoods to reduce the possibility of flooding during significant rain events. Another critical component of the city's stormwater program is water quality protection. Stormwater starts as just rainwater, but as it runs off roofs, yards, driveways, and streets, it can pick up pollutants such as dirt, trash like cigarette butts, pesticides, and other materials in its path. These pollutants can harm fish and other wildlife. Currently, the city's detention ponds can help treat stormwater by allowing contaminants to settle out of the water before it reaches local waterways. Recent legislation has mandated that cities in California work to capture trash before stormwater leaves detention ponds. This is a costly undertaking as new infrastructure is necessary to be in compliance with these state regulations. Did you know that stormwater does not go to the wastewater treatment plant? It is not treated and flows directly to local wetlands and waterways. In recent years, storm drainage systems have become a front line in environmental protection. Keeping pollutants out of stormwater is critical to ensure clean waterways. All property owners in Davis currently pay a storm sewer fee and a drainage fee as part of their monthly utility bill. For a single-family customer, these combined fees total about $6 per month on average. These charges vary by property type and are currently assessed as a flat rate charged per square foot of the parcel. These two fees are shown as one amount on your monthly utility bill. The current stormwater fees have been in place for decades, and while one has an escalator to help the fee keep up with inflation, the other does not. These fees cover most but not all of the current operations and maintenance costs for the stormwater system, but have not kept up with rising costs or regulations, and do not cover the costs to replace aging infrastructure or other necessary capital improvements. The city's stormwater system was built to manage the stormwater needs of a smaller city footprint, and has not been able to keep pace with changing community needs or storm patterns, leading to localized flooding within the city during major rain events. Modifications to agricultural practice surrounding Davis have also contributed to more frequent flooding events in outlying areas. The city also has some aging infrastructure that needs to be replaced before it fails. This South Davis pump station was built in 1965, and the station itself is subject to major flooding. Here is what the South Davis pump station looks like during flood events. Due to higher levels of flooding caused by increased water runoff over the years, city crews have had to install a steel plate about halfway up the door to this station in order to keep the floodwater from entering and destroying the equipment inside, and even that is barely enough to keep the water out. This station did flood prior to welding this plate in the doorway, and the station did fail. Since the plate has been in place, the station has not flooded. However, as can be seen in the photo, it has been close at times. This flooding also causes safety concerns for staff when they need to wade into the floodwater to access the station. Even when not flooded, they have to step over this 2-foot-tall plate year-round. Some of the equipment in pump station number 6, as shown here, has been in use since it was built in 1924 and is well past its recommended replacement date. The equipment in both of the pump stations shown is long overdue for replacement with new, more energy efficient and higher capacity equipment, but the current stormwater fees cannot cover these costs. State regulations related to stormwater management and quality have also recently been updated. These proposed rates will allow the city to adapt with these changes without competing for funding with other vital city services. As maintenance costs and clean water regulations continue to increase, without a new stormwater fee, the program will struggle to meet its commitment to city residents, businesses, and visitors to keep up with its important flood control and clean water responsibilities. A dedicated and reliable funding source, which would replace both of the current stormwater fees, is needed to provide for clean stormwater, flood control, improved maintenance, capital improvements, and enhanced services. The proposed stormwater rate will be approximately a $7 increase per month for single-family property owners. In order to address these funding issues, city staff initiated a fee study in coordination with the city's Utilities Commission, culminating in a fee report which lays out all of the stormwater facilities and services, projected the program's revenue requirements, calculated how much each type of property contributes to stormwater runoff, and determined how much each type of property should pay as its fair share of stormwater costs. The fee report and proposed fee increases have been reviewed by the city's Utilities Commission and reviewed and approved by the City Council. The fee report shows the current revenues and expenses of the stormwater program. As you can see, projected expenses for this year are currently higher than revenues. The fee report estimated some future needs to add to our baseline values for operations and maintenance. These needs include an increase in the clean water standards the city must meet before it discharges stormwater into the creeks, as well as other operations and maintenance costs. The fee report also quantified the stormwater system's high-priority capital needs, including replacing outdated pump equipment as we discussed earlier, and widening the Covell Channel to meet increased water flow needs. Storm Drain Station number 3, located at the north end of H Street, has been identified through stormwater studies as a high-priority replacement project. This station pumps all stormwater from the area bounded by Covell Boulevard to the north, Russell Boulevard to the south, State Route 113 on the west, and Pole Line Road to the east. Stormwater from this considerably large area all flows to pump station number 3 and is moved to the F Street Stormwater Channel. In 2019, the city was awarded a grant from the Federal Emergency Management Agency to determine the best plan to remodel or rebuild the station to meet the current needs and future needs of the area. Page 21 of the fee report shows the amount of the fees being proposed to cover these costs. The average single-family home would pay about $13 per month on their monthly city services bill for stormwater, with smaller residential properties paying a little bit less and larger residential properties paying a little more. Other types of property would also pay their fair share, as shown here. As with all of our utility funds, there is a robust public process to review how these funds are spent. Each of the city's utilities is a dedicated enterprise fund, meaning the rates pay for the program and program operations entirely and cannot be utilized for other programs. Each year, the city's Utilities Commission reviews each fund, including rate revenue and planned expenditures. Stormwater fee updates will be presented annually to the City Council with the Utilities Commission recommendations for the city budget process. In the past, the city's general fund or loans from other utilities could cover minor required maintenance activities not currently paid for by stormwater fees. But in recent years, the needs of the utility have expanded beyond these minor projects. Property owners will determine whether the proposed fee will be implemented. There are 3 different opportunities to make your voice heard regarding the proposed stormwater fee increase. A notice was sent out to property owners mid-March with information on the new proposed fee. The notice also provided details on how property owners who do not approve of the proposed fee can submit a written protest. There are 4 virtual community meetings being held via Zoom in March and April. Thank you for joining us today. All members of the public are invited to attend one or more of these community meetings. Each meeting will cover the same information. The dates and times are listed in the public hearing notice and on our website at stormwater.cityofdavis.org. On May 4th, the City Council will hear comments from the public in regards to the proposed fee. At the hearing, the written protests will be counted, and if property owners of more than 50% of the properties subject to the fee have submitted a valid protest, the City Council will not be able to take further action in regards to this proposed fee. If there is not a majority protest, then the Council may vote to proceed with a ballot measure. If the Council votes to proceed with a ballot measure, we expect ballots to be mailed to property owners in mid-May 2021. Property owners would have until June 25th to mail or bring in their ballots to the City Clerk. Completed ballots would have to be received by this deadline to be counted. Postmarks will not count. If the City proceeds to balloting for this initiative, we expect the ballot results to be announced at the City Council meeting on July 6th. For more information on the proposed stormwater rates, please visit stormwater.cityofdavis.org. Thank you for joining us today, and we will now start the live question and answer session. The City.
All right, so before we get started on the live Q&A, we have a couple of questions that have already been asked a few times that we wanted to go over, and they are listed here. We have questions about how the stormwater fee is currently charged, if we could use some of the federal stimulus money for stormwater infrastructure, how we define enhanced services in the notice, and why we're using a CPI from the Bay Area. So each of the following slides is going to have a short response to these questions for you all today. The stormwater charge appears as one charge on the monthly utility bill, as we stated in the video, and it is a combination of two charges. And that is a little confusing, but we do have two charges that create the one charge that appears on the bill. In terms of the use of the federal stimulus dollars, we are still looking into the requirements around the use of this money, but right now all signs are pointing to that funding being intended for COVID relief and COVID relief measures, not for infrastructure improvements that would not be tied specifically to the COVID-19 pandemic. We do want to say the city is always looking for opportunities to apply for grants to offset any major projects that we might have. And the rates that we have they account for a number of necessary adjustments to the Stormwater Enterprise Fund, including the development of a reserve and funding for routine services that aren't necessarily appropriate for a one-term or one-time fund source like these federal stimulus dollars. In the notice that was sent out, we included a reference on enhanced services. We wanted to clarify that the term enhanced here is being used to describe services that are not currently being performed or are not performed as frequently as needed, but are necessary to maintain efficient and effective operation of the utility and to prevent backlogs like the one that we are currently experiencing. And lastly, the city used the San Francisco Oakland Hayward Consumer Price Urban Index as it is used for taxes, assessment, and fees by agencies throughout Northern California. The cost components of the stormwater program are impacted by a wide variety of factors, so no one CPI will be sort of a perfect match. But what we'd like to say is it's important to remember that the rate will not adjust automatically. The CPI index sets the max amount up to 3%, but the City Council, with support from the Utilities Commission, will set the actual rate each year based on the program revenue and expenditures. So there is always a check-in process for the rate setting. And as we start the questions and answers with staff, we want to make sure that we can address as many questions as possible. Because of that, we're going to ask you to help us out by asking one question at a time. If you have additional questions, please wait and raise your hand for the next opportunity. If we're not able to get everyone today, we will post the questions on the city's website under the information for this public meeting. And you can always email questions to pwweb, here on the screen, pwweb@cityofdavis.org, and someone will respond to you. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you, Adrian. At this time, we'll open the floor to any questions that anyone might have. The directions to be able to do that are on the screen now. Basically, press *9 if you're on your phone, or go ahead and raise your hand in the Zoom. If you don't know how to raise the hand, if you go down to the bottom of your screen, there should be a raise hand function that pops up, and if you click on that, we'll be able to let you in. Okay, I see one hand raised. Dawn?
Okay, Michael, you are unmuted. Feel free to ask your question.
Still showing is muted.
Michael, you've been given permission to talk, but you may need to unmute your on Zoom.
There you go.
Okay, so my question is about your capital projects. You know, you had a general description of those. What are specifically the capital projects? Over what period of time would the projects be executed? And that's basically my question.
Hey, Michael, if I heard you correctly, you're asking about our capital projects and the time frame for what they are, and the time frame, and the second part of that is what time frame we'd be looking to accomplish those. Brian, I don't know if you want to respond to that. I certainly can, but Brian Michelson is our manager that oversees the operations of the stormwater system. Brian?
Yeah, so we have actually have 4 projects. The first one is Storm Drain Station number 5 in South Davis. It's the one that you saw that had the welded plate in the doorway. It was built too low, and during heavier intensity storms does flood. We need to raise that up to prevent it from flooding and failing. The second project would be H Street Pump Station, which handles a large area that was shown in here in the presentation. It was built in 1965. It's got diesel pumps in it. The Air Quality Board would like us to switch those over to electric. It doesn't currently have the capacity to handle the storms that we're seeing at times. It was designed to a 10-year storm. Typically, they're designed to a 100-year or 200-year storm with recent and current standards. So in order to prevent flooding through that large area, we want to enhance that station and bring it up to the needed capacity. The other pump station is the Richards Tunnel Pump Station, which was shown in here as well. Built in 1924, pump stations typically have a useful life of about 50 to 60 years. We're getting close to 100 years on that station. When that floods, it does take out the Richards Tunnel because the flooding does exceed the depth that cars can pass. We'd like to put some communications in it as well, so we're aware of any flooding that may happen. And the fourth project would be West Covell. As we see water coming in from the west of the city, that tends to flood out Lake Boulevard or County Road 99 and Covell. We need to do some pipe work there to take that water underneath the roadway to prevent that flooding, as well as widen that channel to convey that water. So that's a brief description of those projects. As far as timing of those, as we move forward, we will need to go through design. As was mentioned by Adrian earlier, unless projects are shovel ready, we are not really in a position to get grants because they usually look for shovel ready projects. So as we're able to move forward and study some of these stations, we will know better what that time frame may be and have a better estimate of what the cost will be for those projects. So I hope that answered your question. Please feel free if you have any further questions on that.
Thank you, Brian. I would add to that the way we've structured the fees that you see before you is that we've grouped the planning estimates of those capital projects into one basic cost, and the fees basically allow the revenue that we're asking the community to accept here would allow us to move forward with all of those projects. I would say from a time frame, given the age of the infrastructure, as Brian indicated, we would basically probably roll right into design on the majority of them, and then stage the construction over a number of years, but certainly sooner rather than later. But the way the fee has been designed is we would have that revenue stream intact to go ahead and construct all of those changes. Okay. Anyone else have any questions?
Hi, Kathy. I see you have a question. You've been allowed to talk.
Thank you. Hi. Yeah, I just have a question. I just joined your webinar. I'm not sure what has been said already, if you're just talking about projects, but I'm trying to understand the fee schedule. If we are out here in Willowbank and we have a larger half-acre piece of property, it's hard to understand what you're saying in your letter, but it sounds like the impermeable surface of your property is what's determining the fee. And out here, we're actually a benefit to the watershed since we have very little runoff. So I'll take my answer offline. I don't know if that, does that make sense? My question clear?
I think what we're hearing is you have a larger lot and you have a lot of not a lot of impervious surface is what I'm hearing. And you're asking how that would potentially impact the fee. Yep, I can 1 second. Yeah, so that's a great question. I would say is certainly with any property. What we've done with the fee study and how the criteria are done as far as the property size, we did a statistical analysis within the city of those average sizes for properties and the average impervious surface. Obviously, if you have a large lot such as you do, and there are that is not necessarily consistent with the large lot size. Typical impervious surface, that's something that we certainly could assess. We expect that there'll be some of those properties or some of those questions that come up as we hopefully roll this out. So that'd be something that certainly we could talk about if the fees are approved. So hopefully that answered your question. We can move on to the next the next question.
Michael, I'm allowing you to talk.
All right, Michael.
Yeah, I just wanted a quick follow up. Just looking at that Russell pump station, that the complete reconfiguration of that entry to the city was planned at one point. And it also looks like your pump is, there's a discontinuous pipe coming out of the pump station to, PVC pipe. I don't know whether there's some other drain off of that or not, but so it looks like that one is actually maybe shut down, at least partially at this point. And then the other part, my question was, if water is coming in from the west off of county lands, is there any type of cost sharing involved for that pumping station? I think we can see that if that's on the south side of the road from Winters, you see the water running down there, coming from the county. So it seems to me like they have a shared responsibility.
Okay, Michael, if I heard you correctly, you're asking specifically about the Russell Boulevard pump station. Brian can expand on that a little bit. I'll be happy to answer the second part of that, is the water flowing in from out of town essentially, and is there a shared responsibility there? So Brian, if you want to answer the first one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually the Richards Boulevard tunnel. That pipe is so that we can hook up a pump that we bring in when the flooding is bad, because the pump station cannot keep up with it at times. So we need to bring in a manual pump towed in by a truck, hook it up to that pipe, and then we're able to lay a hose out into the tunnel and try to pump on top of what the pump station can pump to keep up with it. We just don't currently have the capacity in that pump station to keep up with it. So that pipe is functional. It's not used every day or in every storm, but it is critical for the operations with the pump station being in the condition it's in.
Thanks, Brian. And so thanks for correcting me. I inadvertently said Russell, not Richards. I appreciate that.
Okay.
The second part of that is from a perspective of water flows that come in from out of town and by their nature, we flow out of town. From a typical stormwater regulatory perspective and development perspective, natural drainage that used to occur is not necessarily the responsibility of the upstream user. So from a perspective of if water's coming in, it's incumbent upon us to make sure that it comes through and out of the community without damaging the community. That being said, and the same holds true for water that leaves our city. We don't necessarily assist county or other entities in maintaining facilities outside of the city as well, with some limited exceptions. The other aspect of that, and I want to touch on this a little bit because you bring up the good point of cost sharing. There are instances where we do talk with the county and we do talk with other entities where it makes sense to have some cost sharing and shared responsibility. The South Davis, one of the stations that you saw that tends to flood, that's one of those areas where there are others that are draining to that station. And we absolutely are chatting with the county to see if we can get some cost recovery associated with that. All of that, those discussions, grants, any other revenue streams that we can look for that are appropriate for the utility. We are always looking at those opportunities. As we've indicated, every year there's potentially a cost of living of up to 3%. Adjustment to these fees in the future. If we're successful in getting some of those additional revenues, whether it be one-time grants or whether it be an ongoing revenue from another entity, that's gonna certainly play into whether or not we need to do any future increases on those on that annual basis. So a great question, and certainly we're actively looking at that all the time. Okay.
Looks like we have a question from Trudy. Trudy, feel free to unmute and ask your question.
We're still, I think Trudy, we're still showing you muted, Trudy. There you go. Oh, back to muted.
I'm not. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep, you're good.
All right, good, thank you. Sorry. On the subject of grants, as you just mentioned, in reading through the materials that have been done to come towards this proposal, it looked like we've tried and not gotten grants over just the last few years. But I was wondering, with the new administration nationally that we have, and of course we don't know, but they're talking about some major infrastructure funding, et cetera, if you see there may be a chance of reapplying for some grants, given maybe a slightly more positive view towards California here in the next year or two.
Okay, I'll let Adrian, if she'd like, answer this question. I think that's a great question. What I heard, and Adrian, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I heard was you're asking if, we've obviously applied for grants in the past that were unsuccessful, and you're asking about could we apply you into the future, especially with maybe some new opportunities that might be presenting themselves. Adrian?
Yes, thank you. That is what I heard as well. So I would respond in sort of two ways. One is that one of the challenges, as Brian has already mentioned, is that we've had limitations in being able to develop projects that are shovel ready. And shovel ready means ready for implementation. Contracts are ready to go. The contractor's there, we're ready to work. A lot of the time, planning grants are a lot harder to find. So if we are able to succeed in this process of adjusting these rates, then we'll have an opportunity to develop those planning studies and develop those shovel-ready projects which will put us in a better position for getting grants, especially if the new administration does provide more infrastructure grants, for California, where we are part of that group. The other challenge that we do have, and this is for any grant, is that oftentimes, of course, they're focused on communities that have significant disadvantage. And by most definitions per the federal government, the city of Davis often does not qualify as a jurisdiction that has a significant disadvantage. So that is one kind of limitation that we have in applying for grants. The other is making sure that we have projects that are shovel ready. But we do have optimism that as we move forward, we'll be able to secure more grants for projects that are ready to go. And I hope that answers the question.
All right, thank you, Adrian. I would just to add on that real quick is if we are successful, just like I mentioned with the last question, if we are successful in gaining grant opportunities, then that would lessen that potential need of adjusting into the future years. And certainly as we go to the Utilities Commission every year with a fund review and an update and council, that would certainly be information we would convey in those years. All right.
We have a question from Trisha. Trisha, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. In the presentation, it mentioned an increase in regulation that kind of helps drive this fee. Can you expand on the regulations that surround this?
Sure. So one of there are any number of regulations, regulatory drivers that have impacted our potential rates looking forward in our operations. One of the largest ones that's coming up that has been enacted and we're actively working through, what it means for the city is it's called the trash amendments to our permit for stormwater within the city. And in effect, and I think it was mentioned in the video, in effect, we're required to mitigate trash and other contaminants that would be coming from the city and entering into waterways. So as we look to rebuild a number of these stations, adding actual screens to screen out that trash, looking in town at certain areas to see if we have to improve certain inlets to the system so that trash is not able to get in. Those are going to be some large drivers from a regulatory perspective. So it's, I apologize, I need to take a drink of water. Losing my voice a bit. So from that perspective, that increases our operation costs because we have to maintain that infrastructure moving forward. And it's also reporting requirements around that and around those regulations that we have to report to the state every year. Those are some of the larger drivers from a regulatory perspective. Water quality is also another one we touched on in the video as well. We are now beginning to have to actively sample our discharge points, and that is only going to increase in the future as more and more things come under the scrutiny from a stormwater perspective. I liken the stormwater regulatory framework right now to where water and wastewater were 20 years ago, in that a lot of the regulatory framework and regulations that are surrounding water and wastewater from a quality perspective are now starting to get into the stormwater arena, because that's now that those are regulated to the degree they are. Stormwater is the largest contributor, if you will, moving forward to our water bodies, and certainly without treatment currently. So those are certainly some of the drivers on a regulatory side. Okay. I'm not seeing any other hands. Any other questions that anyone might have? Okay, a couple more.
Elaine, I'm going to allow you to talk here.
Hi, Stan. There's been a kind of a debate going on next door. Essentially, the gist of it is that if the city doesn't buy the fire truck, then they can take that money and take care of the stormwater problem. I'd like you to address that.
Okay, Elaine, if I understand what you're saying, it's you know, the city is expending funds on other priorities that council has determined, and we're why can't that be used for stormwater, or why isn't it being used for stormwater? So from the city's point of view is, you know, the initial answer is, of course, general fund can be used for most purposes within the city. That's why it's the general fund. But from that perspective, you know, there are many priorities, and I would say priorities beyond what the general fund can support now. So from a city council perspective and staff perspective, these four utilities, water, wastewater, stormwater, and solid waste, the most resilient path for revenue and to ensure that we have the revenue for each of these utilities is through rates. And that's why we're proposing this fee here, because as you can imagine, if we were looking to get you know, $1.5 million a year of general fund to support the stormwater utility for the next you know, 20 to 30 years into the future, that certainly could be at times a great challenge for the general fund. So that in a nutshell is why we look to fund the utilities with a more resilient source of funding that's not really subject to economic downturns.
Another question here from Michael.
Okay, Michael.
Go ahead, Michael. I think you're
Sorry.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, you know, I noticed that, you know, the camping in stormwater channels, you can see it along the railroad right away and on 8th Street and maybe elsewhere in town, I don't know. But, you know, it seems to me like that is potentially some of the worst impacts on the stormwater. It could be infectious diseases and other, you know, as well as trash. And is there cooperation within the city to address those potential impacts on the stormwater drainage?
Yeah, great question. Basically, from what my understanding, you're asking about the homeless camps that pop up in some of our storm channels around town, and what essentially how the city's looking to address those. Is that correct, Michael?
It is.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I will say that certainly has been a problem that's existed for a period of time. I will say our operations group that Brian heads works with the police department. We work with the county at times, and certainly we endeavor to mitigate those impacts to the stormwater system, but also mitigate the impacts to the individuals that are having to live there. So there's been a number of steps council has taken to try and mitigate some of that. Certainly it's an ongoing battle, if you will, to try and help that community. But from a stormwater perspective, yeah, we're when we can and working with other departments in the city, we actively will help clear and clean some of those areas. But you're correct, it is a concern that we need to continue to address. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Okay, looks like Elaine wants to jump back in.
Elaine, feel free to ask your question.
Yeah, quick question. Do you know what's going on at the hospital? I know the hospital is flooded, their parking lot flooded out. I think it was the last storm or the year before. I can't remember which. I assume that part of the capital improvement project is to widen the, that trench on Cavell. But I noticed they were doing something in the parking lot. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know what they're doing in the parking lot. Yes, to answer your question about the ditch along Covell, that would be part of that project to widen that, which will help convey that water around more efficiently. So yes, we're working to address that. But again, I'm not sure what's going on at the hospital parking lot.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Any additional questions? Okay. Not seeing any right this second. Okay, Adrian, do we want to go to the next slide? So thank you for your questions. Just wanted to let everyone know that's here today. So you can go to our website, stormwater.cityofdavis.org. Certainly the fee report, fee study, and all of our other associated materials, including the Utilities Commission comments and feedback are included on that website. Please, if you haven't, take the opportunity to look through there. If you have other questions around that you think of, there may be some answers already for you there that might assist you in understanding what we're looking to do here. So thanks. And again, thank you. We're going to go ahead and do this meeting, same format, same video. Again, 3 more times. The dates are there on the screen. Tuesday, March 30th, Thursday, April 8th. Both of those are at 6 p.m. And then Saturday, April 24th at 1 p.m. And then login information is on the city's website and also on the city calendar. Okay. With that, I think we're done for the day for this meeting. I appreciate everyone that attended and the questions. Thank you.